Gentlemen, welcome to our channel. If you, like me, do not support adultery and believes that cheaters should be fully responsible for their actions, then like this video and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Well, let's get started. My wife and I first met as students. At that time, we both worked part-time and studied full-time. During one of the lunch breaks, our paths crossed. I was immediately captivated by her amazing beauty, and I began to specially go to the same cafe in the hope of meeting her again. Eventually, fate intervened and she approached me, striking up a conversation during our next meeting at the restaurant. I was sure she was interested, so I plucked up the courage and asked her out. Our acquaintance developed rapidly, and we started dating. Over time, we decided to take our relationship to a new level and got married a few years later. At that time, I was finishing my college studies, and my part-time employer offered me a full-time manager position. At this time, my current spouse continued to receive education, and I assumed responsibility to fully finance her study expenses. The decision to financially support her education arose shortly after we became spouses, since she was from a large family with limited income. Given her part-time job and limited funds, I worked full-time and therefore could contribute to her education. I financed her education, which will be discussed later. She has high intelligence, graduated with honors from the university, and eventually received a highly paid professional position, which she held for several years, receiving a solid income and enjoying excellent benefits. Throughout the entire period of courtship and early marriage, our intimate life was full. Our meetings were not daily, but passionate, sometimes turning into something unusual. In my younger years, I was popular because I was the captain of the football team at school, and in college I kept in good physical shape. I have participated in numerous half marathons and other similar events. This apparently had a positive effect on my romantic life, as I had several partners, including a long-term girlfriend who was quite adventurous in the bedroom, but compared to my wife, I realized that she has a much richer, intimate history. Despite the fact that she was younger than me, she had many more partners and experienced a wider range of sensual sensations. She was prone to partying and wild behavior, which brought her well-deserved fame. Interestingly, I learned about all this from a mutual friend at the very beginning of our relationship, and it didn't bother me at all. Moreover, it only increased my sympathy for her at the initial stage of our relationship. She constantly admired me, emphasizing that I'm the only person who genuinely cares about meeting her needs and satisfying her. These words have always lifted my spirits, and even today, I put her satisfaction above my own. I've always considered myself pretty average in every way, and this made me think that I should make every effort to ensure my spouse's desire and prevent any thoughts of seeking a better intimate experience elsewhere. I must admit this uncertainty has remained in me. But after several years of marriage, I decided to fulfill my dream, to create my own sports team, and this path was not easy. Throughout the whole time, my wife has provided me with constant support, and in order to give this process more dynamics, we decided to purchase a spacious house. Balancing between a permanent job and the creation of a new business, sleep has become an unaffordable luxury for me, and for 2 decades, I have often slept no more than 4 hours a day, and I assure you that this is not an exaggeration. Financial difficulties during this period were very noticeable. Thanks to my dedication to the team, I have repeatedly changed jobs while investing significant personal funds in its development. Despite the fact that my wife earned more than me, we periodically had disagreements about money and my spending habits. But despite these disputes, our relationship remained strong and strong. She was not only my wife, but also my closest friend and lover. As part of a team that often went to events during the season, my wife accompanied me on about 90% of the trips, always being by my side. Before we had children, she was always there for me, providing me with reliable support. Sometimes, some events took place quite close to home, and I could return late at night, even if she did not come. Unfortunately, this meant that at this time I missed numerous family and friendly meetings. She independently attended numerous weddings of relatives and friends, as well as other events. She even went to the beach several times with her unmarried friends, spending a whole week there to relax and have a good time. The beach has a special place in her heart. Shortly after our 5th wedding anniversary, when I was looking for photos of the team, my wife suggested looking at the boxes in the spare room. To my surprise, I came across photos from her bachelorette party. We've already discussed this event, and she mentioned drinking, dancing, and harmless flirting with some guys. By comparison, my own bachelor party was pretty wild. Her brothers were known for their wild antics, so I, as a well-mannered person, had no concerns about her behavior. But the pictures showed the opposite picture. Surprisingly, the bridesmaid gave her a stripper and prudently captured the moments so that they would remain in her memory for a long time. In the photos, the stripper was captured during the performance, and my wife enthusiastically joined him, getting great pleasure from it. The last photo was particularly shocking. The stripper was completely undressed, and my wife remained fully clothed and touched him. My reaction was complete bewilderment. I took a picture and, without wasting time, showed it to her, immediately asking what was the matter. In response, she admitted that she deliberately hid the incident with the stripper, fearing my jealousy. According to her, her friends encouraged her to communicate with him, and she, being intoxicated, succumbed to their pressure. She swore by everything that was dear to her and insisted that there was nothing else. Considering that I behaved the same way at my own party that night, I couldn't bring myself to be very angry. The main source of my irritation was that she kept silent about this event. She was well aware of the details of my party, thanks to her brother's stories. I found that she was able to selectively omit details without feeling that she was lying, which made me doubt the honesty of her stories about trips to the beach. However, over time, our situation has improved significantly. We decided to postpone the birth of children until we become financially stable. In addition, my sports team began to thrive and generate income, rather than being a financial burden. After a successful career, my wife and I came to the common opinion that it was the right time to start a family. In 4 years, we had 2 children, and life seemed to have blossomed. Our sports team began to achieve success, win championships, receive awards and recognition. Gradually, I became a recognizable figure in our society. The locals called me a kind of celebrity. Participation in TV interviews, radio appearances, and other local and regional events has become a familiar thing for me. Although these opportunities were not so large-scale, they contributed to the overall success that we experienced. Interestingly, in the period between the birth of 2 children, my wife and I felt an incredible level of intimacy, which served as an impetus to deepen our relationship. In those exciting and unpredictable times, we experienced a great sense of joy. The internet played a significant role where she shone like a star. Her incredible beauty and notes of passion added an extra layer of excitement. But a few years ago, at her request, this chapter ended. Undoubtedly, these moments were the brightest event in my life. It is important to emphasize that our stormy adventures were exclusively the 2 of us. We openly discussed the idea of being naughty and came to the unanimous opinion that it would be an absolute rejection. She made it clear that any form of infidelity would mean the end of our story without exception. We were still very close, but recently I noticed that after the birth of my 2nd child, my wife began to hold a grudge against the sports team. She admitted that she worries about how much attention, awards, and recognition I receive, while she has worked so hard and sacrificed so much to support me. Unfortunately, I didn't pay attention to it at the time. Now that we have children, my wife either cannot or does not want to take them with her to our events, which forces her to gradually reduce her trips with the team. I sincerely assure you that I always invite her to join me. I desperately want her by my side, so let's fast forward a few years. Unfortunately, my wife's father died, leaving a void in her heart. They had an incredibly close bond, and he always protected his precious daughter. Interestingly, at first, he did not approve of me, but over time he warmed to me, and I began to sincerely love and respect him. But then everything changed when my wife informed me that she intended to quit her job and return to college to make a new career, following in the footsteps of her late father. This news alarmed me because, in addition to taking care of our 2 young children and keeping a full-time job, I will again be responsible for funding her education. I will also be leading my team while she returns to college full-time. Despite this, I really wanted to express my support to her because I knew how much it meant to her and how much support she gave me when I was just starting my team. She worked constantly during the summer and at night to finish as quickly as possible, and I did my best to match her. Looking back, I can say that in those days, the children and I had a lot of fun. I picked them up from kindergarten, cooked for them, and sometimes we all went to team events together in the evenings. Everything seemed to be going fine. A few years have passed and we have reached such a level that I suggested that she spend a second honeymoon on her favorite beach for a week together. Our first honeymoon wasn't perfect because of financial difficulties, and I wanted to make it up to her. The trip was a success. She was delighted with the beach, and we spent more intimate moments than during our first honeymoon. But it was after this trip that the relationship began to deteriorate. Despite the fact that our children had already grown up, she no longer had the desire to travel with the team. She had a desire to go to the beach every year in the summer, and it was at the peak of my employment when I could not join her. Although she mentioned that I could accompany her if I wanted, she made it clear that she would go anyway. She expressed her dissatisfaction with the fact that she would not be able to go, and justified her decision by saying that we have a stable financial situation. She took the children with her and sometimes invited one of her relatives, but I still had a feeling of anxiety. Although she didn't have the opportunity to go this year, she has already informed me that she plans to go without me next year. I don't believe she meets anyone during these trips, but it still bothers me. Over the past few years, her dissatisfaction with my team has become more and more noticeable. She rarely spends time with the team, which makes even our mutual friends wonder what's going on. About 2 years ago, she started constantly talking about a new colleague, and it's not hard to guess what this will lead to. She admires his intelligence and constantly emphasizes the new ideas that he brings to work. Surprisingly, a close friendship quickly developed between them, which is unusual given her previous reluctance to get closer to colleagues. From the very beginning, I felt something was wrong, and this feeling remained. Her company is organizing a grand event in which everyone will take a bus to a bustling city for a luxurious dinner and entertainment. The invitation applies to both employees and their spouses, which gives me an ideal opportunity to finally get to know this person. Although he surpasses me in height, being about 6 feet 2 inches, it is obvious that he is overweight and does not have sufficient physical fitness. And yet I couldn't help but notice the way he was looking at my wife, showing a clear interest in her. Wanting to clarify the situation, I asked my wife alone about their relationship. She reassured me, confirming that they were just friends, and asked me not to worry. She did not hide the fact that his appearance does not attract her, saying, "Just look at him. I would never be able to get carried away with such a person." During the bus ride home, she politely asked me not to sit next to her so that she could stretch out and fall asleep, given that it was already nearing 1 o'clock in the morning. Admittedly, this annoyed me a little because I expected that a work colleague would soon join her. Surprisingly, she spent most of the 4-hour trip without anyone sitting next to her, but in the last half hour, a colleague still approached her, sat down next to her, and struck up a conversation for the rest of the way. Naturally, I asked what they were talking about, and she explained that it was about an upcoming work project on which they would collaborate. Although my intuition was alert, I didn't have any concrete evidence that something was wrong. It seems that there has been a temporary lull in our relationship. Perhaps this is due to the fact that we are both busy with other significant projects that do not allow us to relax. But I can't be completely sure about that. What I do know is that she doesn't share my bed anymore. She says it's because of my snoring, which I admit can get in the way. Trying to please her, I offered to sleep in another room so that she would not have to move to the sofa. As a result, we now sleep in separate rooms. Although I hesitate to call it that, but it can be considered another alarming sign, the third in a row. Unfortunately, the situation is getting worse. Our intimate moments are gradually reduced and eventually come to naught. She has always wanted intimacy, but does not claim that she is affected by various medical problems. I can no longer listen to countless excuses why she doesn't want it anymore. I have repeatedly tried to discuss this issue with her, but it always ended unsuccessfully. Although I try to stay calm, I even doubt if she has someone else, because I believe that if she does not get intimacy from me, then she is looking for him somewhere else. Looking back, I regret saying those words, as it could have forced her to open up. And yet, about a month ago, late at night, notifications began to come to her phone continuously. It was convenient for me to charge my phone downstairs at night, and coincidentally, that was the night I planned to sleep downstairs. Fortunately, luck was on my side. I managed to find out her password and then found out that a work colleague had corresponded with her. I stayed up all night, enthusiastically reading their correspondence and carefully studying her phone. On Friday evening, I had no obligations to work the next morning, although a team event was planned, but I was no longer up to it. The messages from him showed longing for her and hope for an early meeting. When their communication became more and more active, it turned out that some texts and discussions disappeared. At the same time, gaps were noticeable in the conversations, indicating the absence of phone calls and other actions. As I said, she is a smart person, and it was noticeable that she was trying to hide some points. The exchange of affectionate expressions such as, "I love you," "I miss you," an abundance of emoticons with kisses and joint selfies testified to a deep connection. At the same time, there were no explicit mentions or evidence of physical intimacy in the conversations. It became clear to me that something was going on here. It looks like she has free time while I'm busy working and communicating with the team, and I think she thinks it's in her favor. There were a lot of alarm signals that I stupidly didn't notice until now. Over the past year or so, she often had to stay late at work, and she went on business trips several times for work. Suddenly, she started drinking excessively every night, as well as showing other oddities. Probably the fear of losing everything that I worked so hard to create did not allow me to solve this problem earlier. The day after I got into her phone, I asked my eldest child about the marital status of one of my wife's co-workers. Considering that they were interning at my wife's workplace before closing, I assumed that he knew this. When I was asked about the motives, I came up with a false story that I came across this colleague's Facebook profile, where I did not notice any signs of his spouse. I hastened to assume that he was married. But without wasting time, my child immediately told my wife about my questions, who burst into my office, burning with anger, and began to scold me for invading her personal life by rummaging through her phone. I immediately understood why I asked this question. I guess I somehow unconsciously showed that I was wondering if something was going on. Be that as it may, she followed the typical pattern of behavior that cheaters usually demonstrate. She denied everything. I took screenshots, so she only admitted that I had concrete evidence, and that's not much. She accused me of invading her personal life and many other things. In fact, she distorted the situation so that it seemed to me that I pushed her to such a close emotional friendship with him. But deep down, I knew I didn't have any proof. I explained that I wasn't making any accusations, but it was hard for her to deny that from my point of view, and given the state of our relationship, everything looks quite negative. At my calm demeanor and refusal to enter into an argument, she got even more angry and eventually left. Reflecting on the situation, I spent a lot of time browsing the Reddit site and realized how many mistakes I had made. After our quarrel, she began to hide her phone, change passwords to all her accounts, and take precautions so that I could not easily find any information. I talked to her about it, and she accused me of invading her privacy, even though she offered to give me her phone number if I needed it. I politely acknowledged her intelligence and expressed my opinion that if she has something to hide, then she has the opportunity to do it. In this regard, I am wondering about further actions. All I want is the truth. Although we have already discussed this issue, it has not led to significant progress. I don't want to part with everything we've built together, but I can't put up with cheating and infidelity. The most difficult thing is that no matter what, I still unconditionally love her. She is not only smart and beautiful, but also a wonderful mother of our wonderful children who, just like her, succeed in their studies. I am aware of my shortcomings, such as excessive tension and excessive employment, and I recognize the numerous mistakes I have made. I have made great efforts to provide her with a full life. All I'm looking for now is the pure truth, no matter how painful it may be. I don't want to hear half-truths or to have the truth revealed to me gradually. It's incredibly difficult for me to handle this situation. Despite the difficulties, we made sincere attempts to stay together and solve our problems. Significant improvements have occurred, in particular in our intimate life and in the last month, more than in the entire previous year, and these sensations were exceptionally pleasant. Despite some difficulties I had to face along the way, she has now given me full access to her phone and all social media accounts. but he keeps sending messages, even though she responds to them briefly, usually in one word. It seems that he's still making an effort, but she deliberately makes her answers brief, mainly touching on work issues. In general, everything seems to be fine. But on our anniversary, I tried to do everything to make it special. I bought her favorite dessert, gave her flowers, and even took time off from work to surprise her with such gestures. Unfortunately, her reaction was completely unexpected. She burst into tears. She began to feel guilty. She continued to cry, but refused to tell about the causes of her disorder. This pattern was repeated twice, which led me to think that she was burdened with a serious sense of guilt. But her unwillingness to confide in me left me to think the worst. In addition, she accused me of using GPS to monitor her location, although this was not the case. She said that I could see her location on the GPS with which I allegedly followed her, and considered it necessary to inform me about her plans to have lunch with colleagues. It probably wouldn't hurt to let her know that I'm really watching her. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to convince her that I wasn't following her, so I preferred to ignore her statements. Last night, a bomb fell on us. It turned out that my wife has a son whom she gave birth to at a very early age, even before we met. Suddenly, she decided to give him up for adoption to a wonderful family. Now he wants to be reunited with his biological mother, my wife, as well as with our own children. This weekend, my wife intends to tell our children about his existence and give them the opportunity to meet her new stepbrother. To my surprise, our children are completely unaware of its existence since my wife hid this secret from them. She showed me his picture, and I have to admit that I've never seen him before. Interestingly, he bears a striking resemblance to his father, and he has no physical resemblance to my wife. Last year, he attended a family wedding where she communicated with him in my absence. Since then, a close bond has been established between them. They exchange deep impressions about their families and follow each other on social networks. She firmly believes that I have no right to interfere in this matter since he is her son, and I have no blood relationship with him, although he is the half-brother of my children. Now I am at a loss what to do with all this. To be honest, I'm even thinking about going to a therapist to help me cope with these emotions on my own. I am afraid that I will seem weak, and in front of my wife and children I try to appear strong. I understand that this may seem ridiculous, but it's the truth. Perhaps that's why I use a junk account to discuss this issue. Recently, my children have reached the age of majority, so they are no longer minors. Besides, my wife's son is older than my own children, so he's not going to move in with us. Most of all, I am concerned about disrespect on the part of my wife. You should also think about consulting with a lawyer. Although my wife did not directly say that she had ended her relationship with him, she claims that now their communication will be strictly professional. Despite the fact that they continue to work, she insists on maintaining contact. But if I find out that this relationship continues, it will be a turning point for me, which will lead to the rupture of our relationship. I've already said that although I have no concrete evidence of physical infidelity, emotional betrayal is undoubtedly present. Therefore, I consider this situation as if there was a physical betrayal. It is important to note that we are actively trying to solve numerous problems in our marriage, and I refuse to ignore this problem. She says she is taking steps to help me regain trust in her. I suspect that she may behave dishonestly using social media and other means. Although I have not found concrete evidence yet, I will continue to vigilantly search for the truth. As for her son, it is quite clear that she is being disrespectful to the whole situation. This morning, I contacted 3 different lawyers to get information about my legal status in relation to my assets. The revelation of her son's actions shocked me, because it makes me think about what other secrets could have been hidden from me throughout all the years of our life together. I had a conversation with the eldest child in which I asked why they immediately go to their mother and share something with her. They replied that they thought they might have secrets with her. I clarified that it was not a secret but just a question, and I did not accuse anyone of anything at that moment. It made me wonder why they took it as a secret. They explained that, in their opinion, I asked such a question only if I suspect that something is going on between them. They became upset and began to defend themselves, insisting that their mother would never engage in inappropriate behavior. Personally, I think they are aware of the situation and are just trying to do what they think will make their mother happy, and currently it seems to be AP. But I can't be completely sure about that. It is possible that they perceive her as too honest and decent to ever change. I think AP and my eldest child struck up a friendship during the internship because my wife and AP were friends. I know that they talked at work, but I don't have more detailed information. Both of my children are constantly supporting my team. They never showed any dissatisfaction about the time I spend with the team and often asked if they could accompany me. Although my wife prefers not to join us, my children have always done so and continue to do so. It is clear that they are very attached to the team. It never occurred to me to ask if my wife shares information about her son with the AP. As for the team, we had a few arguments about it. I made it clear to her that she should never corner me when I have to choose between my team and hers. Although she may be unhappy with my answer, but it's more because I don't like being given an ultimatum, rather than choosing my team instead of her. In the early stages of my career, I would certainly have chosen her. But in the last few years, I have given preference to my team, suspecting that it has lost interest in me and may even have changed. In the last year or so, I have actually discussed with her my plans to retire and sell the team in about 2 years. But I want to be sure that I will leave on my own terms and at the time I choose. I didn't want to be in a situation where I would have to constantly calm her down. I explained to her that I wasn't following her car, but unfortunately she wasn't convinced. It seems illogical to me because she has the opportunity to leave the car and use alternative modes of transport. I spoke directly to her about the possibility of a divorce, and she clearly said that she did not want it. Surprisingly, she even voluntarily offered me access to all her accounts, and I didn't even ask for it. While I can view his messages to her and her responses, it's hard to determine if she's deleting any meaningful content. It doesn't look like he knows about my observation, since the displays of sympathy have stopped, which suggests that she could have told him something. Their conversations don't look rehearsed. He still mentions going out for a drink after work and shares office gossip with her. But now other people are involved in these conversations, which indicates a shift in their dynamics. As his boss, she has the right to decide whether to cooperate with him directly on projects, and I never gave her clear instructions to stop working with him. Initially, I hoped that she would come to this conclusion on her own, but now I have to set a clear boundary. It is necessary that she no longer participate in projects with him, and it is time to completely cut off contacts. She said she wanted to move away from him gradually, recognizing his emotional immaturity. It's hard for me to accept her words about his weight, or that she doesn't feel attracted to him. I also believe that she does not repent of her actions and may consider herself justified or not see any guilt on her part. When it comes to our intimate meetings, she was always the initiator, and I have to admit that they were quite pleasant. Although she confesses her love to me again, the frequency of these confessions has decreased, which makes me doubt their sincerity. It is clear that it is difficult for me to discern her deceptive behavior. After reading all the messages, I came to realize that my attempts to save our marriage were more out of fear of losing some things than out of sincere love for her. Although I still care about her, it's more a love for the person she used to be and for her role as the mother of our children. The romantic love between us as a couple has faded. Moreover, I don't think I'll ever be able to trust her again. I put forward some tough conditions for our future last night, and we'll see how things develop. Among them is a complete lack of contact with the AP and a guarantee that our children will not meet with him without my presence or knowledge. I demanded honesty and sincere repentance from her. I made it clear that I had reached the point where I needed legal help, and unless a miracle happened, I would enter into a separation agreement and insist on her leaving. In response, she burst into tears, went to her room, and we haven't spoken since. In general, our marriage ended in divorce because of her refusal to break off relations with AP, lack of remorse, and a tendency to shift the blame to another, rather than admit what she had done. Despite all my relentless attempts to save our relationship, I am sure in my heart that I did everything I could. Did I make mistakes? Definitely. Looking back, I would have made a different choice, but I can't change the past. I reached a breaking point and had to go for a divorce, although it cost me a lot of effort. I had to part with my retirement savings and everything else except the house and the team. Despite the pain I still feel, I can say with confidence that it was worth it. I managed to rebuild my life, and every day it becomes easier to bear. I can find joy again in what is important to me. I'm incredibly grateful for the continued support of my brother and his family throughout this difficult period. As I found out later, AP, a lover of intimacy with corrupt women, so that's what happened to my ex-wife. It was a fellow lover who infected my ex-wife with syphilis. I didn't know when it happened, and that's why I went to the clinic for tests. You can't even imagine how worried I was that I was also sick. But fortunately for me, I turned out to be healthy. Apparently, my ex-wife got infected from him after our divorce, or maybe she didn't cheat on me during our marriage. But now it doesn't matter anymore. I'm happy and free from toxic relationships, and now she has to undergo intensive treatment. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Put likes and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.